The United States has long since guaranteed the right to seek asylum for individuals who seek protection after arriving at the border. However, this fundamental right is not always protected, and that has become obvious after recent immigration policies and their consequences. Asylum seekers and refugees are one of the most vulnerable groups in the wake of the pandemic. If the Biden administration does not act to protect them, it will be one of the biggest failings of our immigration system. I'm Andres Mejer, immigration attorney and an immigrant myself. And in today's video, towards a systemic issue. We will also be talking about the metering policy at the US-Mexico border and what the Biden administration is doing about it. In the last part of this video, we'll talk about the Build Back Better Act and what House Democrats have added to it, including paid leave, immigration, and tax changes. If you've started your immigration journey or are thinking of doing so, keep watching the video till the end to learn about all these facts and recent immigration and asylum policies. And if you channel and checking out our other videos. Now let's get to it. Topic number one, the border isn't open. Just 1 in 3 people at the border last year could access the asylum process. One of the biggest concerns that Americans have regarding their immigration is that the borders are wide open. Can't tell you how many times someone has come up to me, hey, now that the borders are wide open, business must be great for you, right? This concern has only become more serious with the release of recent statistics by the Department of Homeland Security. The statistics point a very different picture, with a record of about 1.7 million apprehensions over the last year. This has led to the Biden administration facing a backlash for having lax border security and an open border, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, border security is now stricter than it was 2 years ago under President Trump. First, let's really put this number into context. An apprehension here means an arrest of an individual trying to cross the border by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So where 1.7 million individuals arrested by Customs and Border Patrol while trying to cross the border, not quite. It's important here to understand that while 1.7 million encounters where CBP apprehended people trying to enter the U.S. did take place, they were not all unique. By unique, I mean a person who was trying to cross the border for the first time. Let me explain how this can distort the statistics. So imagine police say that it made 5 arrests in a week. You would of course understand this to mean that 5 criminals were arrested. However, if one of the 5 individuals were arrested on Monday, released, then arrested again on Thursday for a different crime, released and then arrested again on Saturday, that's 3 different arrests for just 1 person. Even if the other 2 arrests made the police during the week were unique, that's a total of 3 criminals leading to 5 arrests. We can apply this to the border situation. Out of the 1.7 million apprehensions at the border, 600,000 were not unique. In other words, 1.2 million people, 1.2 million arrests were unique. So some of those 600,000 were on their second, third, or higher failed attempt to enter the US. So 1.1 million, actually, 1.1 million, not 1.7 individuals were encountered at the border, and all of them were apprehended by Customs and Border Patrol. So what happened after these apprehensions last year? Were all these people allowed to enter the United States? Short answer is no. If all these individuals are trying to seek asylum in the US, only 1 out of 3 would be able to access the process. To make sense of this, you need to understand what asylum is, how it works, and what Title 42 is. An asylum seeker is basically an individual who qualifies under the definition of a refugee. This is a person who is unable or unwilling to return to their country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution. Most asylum seekers and asylees are people who are granted asylum, protection from persecution in the US, are from Mexico, Venezuela, and other northern Central American countries such as Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador. And how does one seek asylum? Well, it's a complex process, but let me try to break it down for you. First, you need to understand that there's no way to apply for asylum beforehand. The process can only be accessed once you reach the United States or a port of entry. Once there, asylum seekers are either put through one of two processes. Keep in mind that asylum seekers who arrive without inspection at the border are put into removal proceedings and must apply for what's called defensive asylum, as they have to defend their right to be granted asylum. Some asylum seekers are put in immigration court removal proceedings where they can file an application and present their case in front of an administrative judge. Other asylum seekers are put in expedited removal proceedings where they are deported from the US without a hearing before a judge. These people, if they were seeking asylum, can request a credible fear interview from an asylum officer at US Citizenship and Immigration Services. Here, the individual must prove that they are eligible for asylum and have a credible fear of returning to their country. If they meet the credible fear screening standard, they are referred to an immigration court. If not, they are deported. These are the two pathways of the asylum process for somebody who's in removal. So what do we mean when we say that only 1 in 3 people are allowed access to the asylum process? Shouldn't all people who arrive at the border seeking asylum be able to access the asylum process in one way or another? Here's where Title 42 comes in. Under Section 265 of Title 42 of the U.S. Health Law, also known as the Pandemic and Expulsion Policy, border agents can expel individuals such as asylum seekers and unaccompanied children that arrive at the border without prior authorization. The reason for this was to prevent a public health crisis by introducing communicable disease, or in this case, COVID-19. Title 42 was put into effect by President Trump in March 2020 and is still in place today. Title 42 has been used by both the Trump and Biden administration to turn away or expel hundreds and thousands of people at the border back to Mexico or their home country without a deportation order. In fact, the Biden administration has carried out nearly 800,000 expulsions under Title 42 in the last 9 months. Out of that 1.7 million apprehensions, only about 500,000 people have been able to access the asylum process. 500,000, that's 1 in 3. 2 out of every 3 arrests or apprehensions at the border led to expulsion or outright deportation. Make no mistake, the high number of border apprehensions in the past 12 months does not equal a high number of border crossings. In fact, due to stricter border security, fewer people are now able to cross the border without being apprehended. In 2006, for every 3 people apprehended at the border, an additional 5 made successful unlawful entry. Today, it's just 1. One unforeseen consequence of the Title 42 being implemented is that the rate at which people cross the border more than once rose from 7% in 2019 to 27% in 2021, the highest in decades. Desperate asylum seekers who are expelled without being able to apply for asylum are likely to try to enter the U.S. again, even after failed attempts. Title 42 has also led to a humanitarian issue. The tens of thousands of asylum seekers who are expelled to and left stranded in northern Mexico often fall prey to cartel violence, kidnappings, and other attacks. These people came to the United States for a chance to escape persecution, and due to restrictive policies, they were left worse off than when they started. The number of asylum seekers is unlikely to decrease in the near future. But unless the Biden administration acts to suspend Title 42 and allow people crossing the border to access the asylum process, we will never be able to make the immigration and asylum system more safe, humane, and orderly. Second topic for today, Biden administration formally ends metering policy at U.S.-Mexico border. In better news, the Biden administration, as I just said, has ended this controversial Trump-era U.S.-Mexico border management policy. Under this metering policy, there was a limit to the number of people who were processed at ports of entry. This reduced the opportunities for asylum seekers to apply for asylum without first crossing the border without permission. If they crossed the border without permission, they would have to suffer long wait times in Mexico, with no guarantee that they would be allowed to access the asylum process once they reached the U.S. port of entry. Enacted in 2018, the metering policy also limited how many people, asylum seekers or otherwise, could enter at ports of entry without prior permission. What basically happened was that U.S. Customs and Border Patrol determined each day how many people they could process at each port of entry, putting the migrants on a list to return later if there was not enough capacity. This effectively led to migrants being delayed in Mexico before they could legally come to the border and claim asylum. While this was meant to deter people from crossing the border, it had the opposite effect. Many people started crossing the border outside the designated ports of entry for a chance to be able to make their asylum claims. However, on November 1st, Customs and Border Patrol Acting Commissioner Troy Miller nixed the metering policy in a memo. This reinstated some of the rules of asylum processing that were in place before the Trump administration. For example, applicants' rights to be screened and strict limitations on entry when U.S. authorities can turn away people at ports of entry. In his memo, Miller wrote, quote, "Importantly, however, asylum seekers or others seeking humanitarian protection cannot be required to submit advance information in order to be processed at Southwest Border Land Port of Entry. The submission, or lack thereof, of advanced information should not influence the outcome of any inspection." Topic number 3. House Democrats add paid leave, immigration, and tax changes to Biden's bill. Let's talk about the potential landmark bill that Biden administration proposed on the 20th of October. This historic proposal, termed the Build Back Better Act, is a 2,135-page document that has one aim: to deliver Biden's presidential campaign hinged on progressive promises and big changes that would tackle a great deal of issues the United States is facing. This includes gripping social issues, and earlier in 2021, the Democratic Party proposed a detailed $3.5 trillion bill to address key changes that were long overdue. The first edition of the bill was met with fierce opposition from the Republican Party, along with centrist members of the House considering this. The revised version of the Build Back Better Act was released as a $1.75 trillion package that deals with immigration, tax, and paid leave reform. As of now, there is a 50-50 seat split in the Senate, with most Democrats pushing for the bill, while Republicans are pretty much united against it. Concerns over funding and some of the quote-unquote radical changes Biden has envisioned for America have caused the matter to be in a state of limbo. There is a potential and hope that some key seats needed to win the majority for the bill to pass are going to be won over. These include 2 moderate Democrats, the first being centrist Senator, quote-unquote centrist Senator Kristen Sinema of Arizona, and the fiscally conservative Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. The previous version of the bill received resistance from these senators who refused to vote on the original bill. As a result, revisions were made to appeal to these swing votes along with other members of the House. Accompanying Biden's expression of determination to pass the bill, the senators of Arizona and West Virginia also signaled some level of support for it on Thursday. Let's briefly discuss some background about the new dedication the House is seeing from Democrats before highlighting key reforms. One strong motivator of the new push for the Build Back Better program is alarming election results that have brought voter confidence in President Biden into question. The election results in Virginia were of particular concern as a Republican majority swept the state. It nearly toppled the sitting Democratic governor in New Jersey, where I'm at, as the Republican support soared. And we don't even know who Jack Citrelli is, and he almost won. It's a particular cause for concern considering how both states were deeply Democratic. These results brought out significant issue of the loss of confidence and faith in the Biden administration, likely due to the inability to deliver on the promise of reform. What further fueled this change was divisions and lack of unity within the Democrats of the House, which caused many bills to fail to pass. Texas Representative Colin Allred commented that, quote, "We have to show that we can govern," end quote, which could not better explain the necessity of the Build Back Better Act to pass. Now let's explore the revisions made to the bill and what new policies Americans can benefit from this bill on social change. The first major change is paid leave, which includes childbirth, recovery from major illness, and caring for family members. This encompassing policy will allow 4 weeks time off with pay to Americans to whom this is applicable. This may be considered a downgrade from the original 12-week paid leave that President Biden was hoping for, but Senator Manchin's concern regarding the cost of a 12-week paid leave meant that there needed to be a compromise. This provision is an important step in the right direction, and the Democrats of the House remain committed to making this a reality. COVID-19's impact had a big role in loyalty to the paid leave issue, as the pandemic revealed that difficult situations workers were put in. People who contracted the coronavirus or had a family member contract the deadly disease faced financial consequences from their workplaces due to their leave. This paid leave revision would accommodate a vast number of Americans who face health concerns. The United States is currently one of 8 countries that do not have a national paid maternity leave, which is why the childbirth paid leave is overdue. Another big proposal in the $1.7 trillion Act revised Trump's 2017 tax plan, particularly restrictions on the tax limits. Termed in the SALT deduction cap, this policy means that there was a $10,000 limit on local and state deductions. Northeastern state lawmakers, like in New Jersey, were ready to introduce change and prevent the ultra wealthy who can avoid high tax sums, and proposed bill implies just that. In this new bill, the deduction cap would be raised to $72,500, which is a massive and promising reform to be implemented for the next 10 years. Furthermore, under this act, large corporations will now be subject to 15% minimum tax rate, in response to the issue of tax deductions that big companies have used to pay close to nothing in taxes. Next, immigration was finally kept as a priority area for social change in this bill. Although it was a later addition, the provisions can create massive opportunities for 7 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. The new policy proposes a framework for a program that will allow applicants to receive work permits to work and travel within the United States for 5 years. Along with this, the issue of unused visas was addressed, and a decision to utilize them to allow more immigrants to gain legal status was proposed. This last-minute provision on immigration means a greater budget, and President Biden has the intention of dedicating $100 billion to conduct these changes. This will raise the bill's budget to $1.85 trillion, and the decision now lies in the hands of the Senate. Other important proposals under this Build Back Better Act have finally addressed central social issues that limit and afflict the U.S. population. Climate change is a global issue, and the environmental impact of its experienced all over the United States. The steadfast intention to act now was reflected in the $555 billion budget in the bill that was allocated to fight climate change. The method for this consists of tax incentives for the development and pursuit of renewable and low-emission sources of energy. Family benefits are also implicated in the bill in the form of a free and universal preschool for all children, a venture backed by a $400 billion budget. $150 billion are also allocated towards building 1 million affordable housing units. Finally, the matter of healthcare will see major improvements if the act is passed in the House, particularly for prescription costs to the elderly. The bill would cap Medicare Part D costs at $2,000, and the prescription costs of the Part B and D program will be subject to negotiation. The price for insulin, which currently sits at $600, is aimed to be lowered to no more than $35 a dose. This is a massive change that is imperative to the millions who are reliant on American healthcare. Let's close off this discussion with the important question on everyone's mind, which is, how are they going to pay for it? If the bill passes and the reform begins to manifest, how will the nearly $2 trillion budget be supported? The Biden administration has outlined a series of places where revenue production is expected. They include an estimated $2 trillion in revenue, which will cover the cost, according to the White House. The policies themselves will generate a stream of revenue, particularly the 15% minimum tax on the profits of big firms. Additional taxes of 5% on earners with incomes over $10 million, along with 3% tax increase for earners with the income above $25 million, are also going to contribute to paying for the bill's budget. President Biden intends to enact strict enforcement on the taxation policies to counter tax evasion, particularly by the wealthy, which will in turn help cover the cost of the bill. That wraps up our video for today. If this video was of value to you, please consider liking and sharing with people who may find it helpful. Also, drop any immigration-related questions you have in the comments below, and we'll try our best to provide an answer to you. You can call us today if you want to discuss your case or need help on your green card or immigration journey, and we will let you know if and how we can help you. And remember, if we can't help you, we won't take your money. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay healthy, be safe.